We see who we are to be as Christians when we hear the word, maybe even when we speak the word. But when it comes to actually doing the word, we seem to have forgotten what we learned from the word.
This is R.N.A.R.D Gospel Channel. Welcome to another new episode. God bless you as you listen.
Welcome, my good friends on R.N.A.R.D Gospel Channel. Thank you for demonstrating your love for this channel, and I appreciate all your viewing and listening to the messages that God is using us to give through this channel. Actually, we have produced over 18 clips on this book of Philippians that lasted for almost over 3 months. And I want to thank you seriously for being part of all this series of our studies. I welcome you again to this wonderful book of James. It is going to be the next book in the Bible that we are going to study together. There are few facts that I want you to know in the book of James before we take it chapter by chapter and discuss it together. Very important thing that you must know about this book of James, which I want to use this episode to really explain these very, very important things that we need to know. These things that I want us to know is divided into 3 sections. Number 1, we have to know, or it is good for us to know, who is this James, the author of the book. Who is this James? And then number 2, I will also want us to see the uniqueness of this book of James. What is the actual unique? What is really unique about this book of James? And then finally, the third thing that I would like us to study in this particular book of James is some of the things that we will come to encounter at the course of studying the book of James. These are the 3 things that I want to point out in this particular episode. Who is James? What is unique about this book of James? And the things that we're going to encounter at the course of our studies. Number 1, who is James? Who is James? The name James comes from a Hebrew word called Jacob. Jacob is a Hebrew word. And then the word James is derived from this word Jacob in Hebrew. And those of us who know who is Jacob in the Old Testament, we know him as a supplanter or a substitute. That is someone who takes the place of another. You remember when the mother gave birth to them, Jacob and Esau. So that story, we're not going into it. That is where the name of Jacob comes from. And it is also called James in the New Testament. But when you go to the Latin in the New Testament, the word James means may God protect. That is what the name James in the New Testament, that is what it means. But if you go to Arabic and also in the Hausa language, the Hausa and Arabic call the name James as Yakub. Yakub. So this name is a name that is found in the Bible, especially in the New Testament. In fact, there are about more than 4 people, but I want to mention just 4. About 4 people that bears this name James that we found in the scriptures. Maybe when you come to study the scriptures and you come across this James, go the other side, you see James, you go here, you see James, it might not mean the same James. That is why it's good for me to point out these 4 different people that bears the name James in the New Testament. The first James is James, son of Zebedee. John, son of Zebedee, is a brother of John. Of course, if you study the gospel, you will see there's a place where they call the sons of thunder. sons of thunder. When you hear the sons of thunder, it's referring to this James and John. But it's not the James that wrote this book of James. This is a different James. You get that in Matthew chapter 4, verse 17 to verse 22. Now, the second one is James, son of Alphaeus. Alphaeus is the father of James. And though this name, this other James, actually is it's not that well known in the gospel. His name is not mentioned that much, except if you go to the book of Matthew chapter 10 in verse 3. He is actually one of Jesus Christ's disciples that Jesus Christ called him. But little is known about this James. Now, the third person is James, father of Judas. This Judas, I'm not referring to Judas Iscariot. This is a Judah, an apostle of Jesus Christ. You get this name from Luke chapter 6 in verse 16. His father's name is James. Then there is another James, which is the one that we are going to, study in this book of James. Who wrote the book of James? This James is a brother to Jesus. In other words, maybe we call him a step brother because they have the same mother. Mary is their mother, but Jesus Christ is not a son of Joseph, because Joseph did not did not give birth to Jesus. It was Mary that gave birth to Jesus through the power of the Holy Spirit. But this James, after giving birth to Jesus, Mary and Joseph got married and then got other children, male and female. So James is one of those brothers to Jesus Christ. But you know what? Do you know that this James did not even believe Jesus until after the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ? That was when he came to believe Jesus. You can imagine, his own brother couldn't believe him during his ministry until after his resurrection. So this is the little I can say about James. You can go further and study more about James. Now, what is the uniqueness of this book of James? There are certain things that I think they are very unique that I want to reveal from this book of James. This book of James is the earliest book written in the New Testament. See, when you see the chronological arrangement of the book of, the books in the New Testament, Matthew is not the first book written in the New Testament. When you look at the date of their writing, James is the first book, is the earliest book written. In fact, James was written around 45 to 48 AD. That was when the book of James was written. It's very, very unique. Now, the second thing that is very unique is that this book of James is mostly Jewish book in the New Testament. And that is why it's sometimes seen as the canon of the Old Testament, because those people who use it most are the Jews. Now, another thing important here is that, the New Testament is written in a Greek language. But let me tell you, the Greek language that James used in writing this book, in fact, is the highest quality Greek language. Well, it is only those who study Greek will understand what I am talking about. The language that is used in writing this book, because the writing of James is completely addressed. It is directly addressed to the Jews, especially those 12 tribes that were spread all over the world. This book was written particularly to them. And in fact, in the whole New Testament, this is the only book that is clearly, directly written to the 12 tribes of Israel. This is the only book. You can see the uniqueness of this book of James. The only book in the Bible that provides the most graphic discussion regarding the power of the tongue for good and evil is James. No any other book in the Bible that provided the most graphic discussion about the tongue or the use of tongue for either good or evil. So, with all these points, you will understand and agree with me that this book is very, very unique. And of course, it is important for us to study. Now, at the course of our study, by the grace of God, there are things that we're going to encounter in these studies. The entire book of James, I gave it a name. The name I gave to this book of James entirely is talking about true religion. The whole book from chapter 1 to chapter 5 is talking about true religion. And throughout our studies, we're going to look into this concept of true religion. Listen, true religion is different from religious. Religious is different from religion. I will come to explain that at the course of our study in the book of James. So the whole of the book talks most about true religion. When you go to chapter 1 verse 1, that verse just give us an introduction. In other words, it only gives us a greeting, a salutation that that James, presented his greetings to all the 12 tribes of Israel. Then it goes on to begin to discuss about true religion from verse 2 of that chapter 1 to verse 18, where that passage tells us about true religions endure trials and temptation. We will come to discuss that at the course of our study. Then if you go to verse 19 of chapter 1 down to chapter 2 to verse 26, it reveals to us the true religion that consists of doing, not just hearing. True religion consists of doing, not just hearing. We will discuss that. When you go to chapter 3, from verse 1 to verse 18, it tells us again on true religion displays wisdom, not just speaking. True religion displays wisdom, not just speaking. Then if you go to the second to the last section in chapter 4 verse 1 to 17, it tells us about true religion befriend God through humility. True religion befriends God through humility. And then finally, chapter 5 verse 1 to verse 20 tells us about the true religion blessed through patience, prayer, and love. True religion blessed through patience, prayer, and love. These are what we are going to expect at the course of our study in the book of James. You can see it is all about practical life of Christians. Practical life of Christians. So we will definitely come to study it to know, who is actually a Christian. How does a Christian supposed to live his own life? Friends, I will love you follow us every week as we unfold this teaching. We'll be producing the episode every week Friday. Please do well to follow us and get all the teachings that God will use us to reveal from the book of James. But you cannot follow us without subscribing to this channel. Therefore, I call upon you to subscribe. Just click the subscribe button and then do well to click the bell icon, because clicking the bell icon will help you, will give you a notification each time we upload a new episode. It will give you an alert. It will give you a notice that a new clip or a new episode have been uploaded. So do well to do that, and the Lord will continue to bless you. Thank you so much for taking your time to listen to this introduction to the book of James. Join me next week as we begin the study proper. Until then, remain blessed.